Video from my trip to North Carolina with Channel Islands Dive Adventures. This was from July 3rd to July 12th. The primary goal was to collect fossil megalodon teeth from the fossil ledge off the coast of Wilmington. This is my first day's haul. You can see a couple of large partial meg teeth, and that long skinny object in the row second to the right is actually a piece of whalebone. This is the haul for my second day. A bit of an improvement, still many partial frags, but I'm also starting to pick up some other species. This is the haul from the third day. As you can see, there's quite a bit of variety. I had sand tiger sharks, extinct makos, fossilized great whites, and partial megalodons. The wreck that I dove the most was the Hyde. The Hyde is a 215-foot dredge ship that was sunk in 1988. For LA folks, that's roughly the size of the WWII. The Hyde's very open, still fairly intact. There's lots of compartments that you can go swimming around. It's an easy penetration. Here's the aft section where the propellers used to be attached. There's quite a bit of life on the Hyde. Large bait balls attract other larger predatory fish. Here you can see that there are some cables that are strewn about. It wasn't quite as stripped as some of the other wrecks I've been on. This was sort of an observation deck in the stern of the boat. Here was some sort of a winch that was up on the bow. Again, what was nice about the Hyde was because it was so small, you were able to circle the entire boat. I would tend to do laps because there was always a current. I would kick up the current one direction, turn around, and drift dive the other. But if you're on the Hyde, you're here for one specific purpose. You want to see a resident that's always on this boat, and that's the sand tiger sharks. This particular sand tiger shark was a very large female, about 8 to 10 feet in length. This would be full grown. Sand tigers look scary, but they're mellow. So mellow, in fact, that you can night dive with them. Let me tell you, that's quite the feeling to look around and then all of a sudden your flashlight illuminates a 6-foot shark that's cruising overhead. An amazing experience. There's other large life on the Hyde. Here's an Atlantic stingray. The night dive also revealed bristleworms and the usual assortment of nighttime life. This is a toadfish that's a little unhappy with me shining the lights on him. Some sort of spider crab. And a really cool sea cucumber. But again, that's not why you're here. You're here for the sand tiger sharks. Some interesting facts about the sand tiger sharks. Sand tiger sharks actually give birth to live young. They only give birth once every 2 to 3 years. This is probably my favorite shot that I got with them silhouetted like that. I thought that was really cool. Sand tiger sharks give birth to live young. They only give birth to one pup because the pup hatches in utero and actually eats its siblings. Sand tiger sharks are primarily peciferous. If you look at their teeth, they're much more needle-like. They don't have those serrations that's characteristic to another shark such as the great white or the tiger shark that eats mammals. There were 2 or 3 sand tigers on the wreck at all times, and if you were quiet and if you were still, you could get some amazing interaction. Here, the sand tiger's coming straight at me. I'm pretty much alone in this little area, and I always tried to take it easy. This was actually the one time I got a little nervous, because you saw this sand tiger swim right at me and is now behind me. And if you look closely, here comes another one. Now I've got a sand tiger circling behind my head, and I've got another sand tiger circling right in front of me. I'm surrounded, and relatively by myself. I decided it was best to be elsewhere. The bait balls on the hide were so dense and so thick that sometimes the sharks would disappear into the bait. This had me a little nervous at times because I was afraid that if it decided to feed, I might be an accidental bite. This was a very, very cool rough-tail ray. It was about 6-foot wingspan. I saw it land, and then I inched my way towards him. This is the best shot that I was able to get. I'd scoot a little bit closer, and it would pop a fin like it was going to take off. Then I'd slow down, then I'd scoot a little bit closer, and it'd pop a fin like it was about to take off. And then I'd stop, and then it would settle down. You could get really close to these sharks. I'm on a rebreather, so I'm not blowing bubbles. This one passed less than a foot away. I could actually watch its eye as it tracked me. It's an incredible experience to be this close to such graceful creatures. Another wreck that we dove was the city of Houston. It's a passenger transport ship that sank in 1878. The city of Houston is pretty much covered in life. What's cool about it too is that you can still pull artifacts off the wreck. Here, for example, is a very colorful angelfish. This was a particularly neat jelly. It was just rolling around in place and didn't seem to have any stinging tentacles. I only saw one on this trip. Unfortunately, there were several lionfish at this location, and they were quite a bit brave. They didn't run from me like the ones did in Roatan. I wish I had a Hawaiian sling. There were several large flounder. One of the people in our group actually caught this one and ate it for dinner. There were triggerfish as well. An entire school, in fact. This is a filefish. I saw several of them, but only of this species on this trip. This was the one and only eel that I saw during my entire time. It's quite a bit different than California. On almost every safety stop, there were barracuda. What was kind of interesting was there was a really clear definition to where the thermocline was. Above the thermocline, the water was blue and gorgeous like this. You can see a remora free swimming. And below the thermocline, it was green and a little milky. This is a, I believe, northern pufferfish. Might have been a cowfish or a boxfish, looking at how bony it was. Here's a butterfly fish. One of the gentlemen on our trip was an elite wreck hunter. He uncovered 4 completely intact glass bottles. He was also kind enough to point me in the direction of an ammo cache. This is a 44 cal bullet that was being sent to the Wild West. And with a little time and a little patience, I was able to pull it up. He told me to submerge it in vinegar, hit it with a wire brush, and then lacquer it to preserve it. There were also several slugs with cases that had eroded away. The Gill was another ship that we dove. The Gill was actually sunk during World War II by a German U-boat. So this was sort of a war memorial, if you will. The viz wasn't particularly good, and the wreck was in ruins. I mean, it was sunk in the 40s. There's Joe filming me. Unfortunately, someone had tied a bottle with some advertisement, some trash, to the location, which I found sort of lacked respect for what this was, that this was something that was sank in battle, lives were lost. So we all did our part and cleaned it up a little bit. It was neat to be able to dive a piece of history. I added an additional day and went up to Morehead City to dive the U-boat. I couldn't be in North Carolina and not dive a U-boat that was actually sank in combat by the United States Coast Guard. This is a fast forward from the reverse, or from the tail to the bow of the U-352. It sits in approximately 110 feet of water. It's a couple of 100 feet long, and it's still largely intact. It is, as you would imagine, a very large tube that's sitting on the bottom. There's basically nothing else around it. It's all sand. But because it's a wreck, it attracts life. There you can see where the forward gun was attached, to that section that's just now off the screen. This is actually a torpedo tube here. There were several portholes and ventilation holes. Submarines back in the day ran on diesel. Several varieties still do. So they would have to surface and run with vents open. This was a little octopus that I found. This was the only octopus that I found on a dive. I'm not sure what species it is, but it wasn't happy that I found him. The final wreck that I dove was the Aeolus. This was an amazing wreck. It's a giant ship, over 400 feet long. It was sank as an artificial reef. This is the bow section. A hurricane came through and broke it up into 3 parts. There's multiple points of penetration on the wreck and life living throughout. Here you can see a stingray emerging from one of the penetration points. Of course, there were also sand tigers. This particular female was a little more aggressive than the ones on the hide. It swam right towards me. This is a similar depth profile as U-352. It's approximately 110 or so feet to the sand. I think this is probably my favorite wreck. Very interesting. There's just so much to see and so much to do. Because it's broken up into so many sections, you can spend 1 or 2 dives just on the bow. You can spend 1 or 2 dives just on the stern. Between the bow and the stern, there's a debris field that you see here. That's sort of the remnants of the effect of the hurricane. So although the ship is a little over 400 feet, because of the debris field, the entire area is well over 500 feet. In fact, it's so big that some people actually got up on the wrong boat. This was a juvenile sand tiger shark. It was a little over 3 feet long, so it must have been less than a year old. Here I'm actually on the stern of the boat. This was a really, really neat trip. It wasn't pretty diving, but it was adventurous diving. I was hunting fossils. I was diving on wrecks from World War II. I was swimming with sand tiger sharks. All in all, an amazing trip. I really can't wait to get back. Hopefully this time I'll be able to find my 6-inch meg tooth.